Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the podcast where we plunge into stacks of sources to pull out those really surprising nuggets of knowledge, the insights that make you feel genuinely well-informed.
And today, we're taking a really unique journey. It spans, well, centuries and continents, all through the lens of a single novel.
That's right. It's a fascinating piece of fiction, and it weaves together two very different timelines.
Yeah, you've got a modern-day American woman having this kind of awakening, and then you have this historical story about a legendary 13th century mystic.
So our mission today is to unpack how these two lives, which seem so far apart, actually connect.
Exactly, through these big themes: love, transformation, spiritual seeking, all of that. And we'll take our time with this one, really aiming for a clear, perhaps deliberate explanation so you can absorb all the details.
Okay, let's dive in then. Our source is Elif Shafak's novel, The 40 Rules of Love, which came out in 2010.
Now, it is fiction, but it draws very heavily on real historical figures and mystical traditions.
And what's so clever, I think, is how it uses these fictional stories to explore these really universal human experiences, that search for meaning.
Definitely. So let's start with the modern timeline.
Right. We begin in Northampton, Massachusetts. It's 2008, and we meet Ella Rubinstein.
And Ella, well, on the surface, she seems to have it all, doesn't she?
Oh, completely. Big house, nice furniture, financial security, the kids. Everything looks, well, perfect.
Yeah.
The life she and her husband, David, supposedly planned.
That whole vision of a big, busy house, elegant furniture, scent of homemade pies, it sounds idyllic.
Yeah, but despite that perfect picture, Ella feels this deep emptiness inside, a real sense of unfulfillment.
And the book describes how love arrives really unexpectedly for her, like a stone hurled into the tranquil pond of her life.
That's such a great image.
Isn't it? And that stone is actually her first assignment for a literary agency she's just started working for. It's a manuscript called Sweet Blasphemy.
By an author she's never heard of, A.Z. Zahara. And that manuscript is really the first ripple, the thing that starts changing everything for her.
Right. And it's not just her internal life. Her marriage is also, well, it's quietly falling apart.
Yeah, there's this really awkward family lunch scene. Her daughter, Jeanette, announces something big about her boyfriend, Scott.
And David, Ella's husband, who's usually seen as this open-minded guy, he reacts really badly.
He does. And then he turns to Ella and asks her, just point blank, "So should I conclude that you didn't marry the man you loved?"
Oof, that's heavy.
It really is. It just exposes this massive void between them.
So it raises that big question, what happens when the life you've built so carefully just feels hollow?
Exactly. And Ella's nearly 40. She's looking at this list she made. 10 things to do before turning 40.
And the last item on that list
is open your heart to love, with 3 exclamation points.
Wow. So she's clearly longing for something more. And then she starts reading about this character in the manuscript, Shams of Tabriz.
Yeah, and she finds herself really drawn to him, even jokes, kind of wistfully, it could be nice to have someone like him around. She's yearning for that intensity.
Okay, so that sets the stage for Ella. Now let's pivot. Let's go back to the 13th century.
Right. We're in Baghdad and later Konya, which is in modern-day Turkey. And here we meet the man himself, Shams of Tabriz.
He's described as a wandering dervish, a mystic, known for unconventional ways and heretical proclamations.
Yeah, not exactly fitting in.
Yeah.
And apparently, even as a boy, he had visions, heard voices, felt he was talking directly to God.
Which you can imagine didn't go down too well. Society, even his own dad, called it wild imagination. Basically told him to shut up about it.
Right. People often fear what they don't understand.
Absolutely. So this inner life leads Shams to create his own spiritual guide, the 40 Rules of the Religion of Love.
And these aren't rules like, commandments from on high. They're principles he feels are inscribed in his soul.
He calls them universal, dependable, and invariable as the laws of nature. And his core belief, the path to the truth is a labor of the heart, not of the head.
Heart over intellect. He wasn't impressed by scholars locked away in their ivory towers.
No, he preferred the company of outcasts, expatriates, and exiles, people on the fringes, because he felt scholars often miss the point about real people.
So he arrives in Baghdad. Most people don't notice him, but one person does. Baba Zaman.
Right, the master of a dervish lodge. He sees immediately that Shams is different. Special.
And Shams wastes no time challenging the status quo. There's a scene with a high judge.
Yes. The judge complains that Sufis, these mystics, make religion too complicated. He insists on just sticking strictly to the Sharia, the Islamic law.
But Shams has this amazing analogy. He says, the Sharia is like a candle. It gives us valuable light.
But, he says, if we forget where we are headed and instead concentrate on the candle, what good is it?
Well, basically saying don't get so caught up in the rules that you forget the purpose, the spiritual goal.
Exactly. It highlights his core idea. God looks into our hearts, not just our actions or our words.
He uses that story of Moses and the shepherd. Right?
Yes. The shepherd prays in this really simple, almost blasphemous way from a conventional standpoint, but is so sincere.
And God prefers that shepherd's heartfelt, blasphemous prayer, the sweet blasphemy, over Moses' more rigid, correct instructions.
It's a powerful lesson. Don't judge how others connect to God, because God sees the heart.
And this radical empathy, it extends to everyone Shams meets.
Absolutely. He talks to a leper, Hassan, gives him a mirror and tells him, you bear God within you.
He engages with Suleiman the drunk, arguing it's the drinker's choices, not the drink itself, that lead to bad behavior.
And that incredible scene in the brothel.
Oh, yeah. Confronting a patron, saying filth is inside, not outside.
Yeah.
The only type of dirt that cannot be cleansed is the stain of hatred and bigotry contaminating the soul.
He genuinely believed every single person is like an open book, a walking Quran, that divinity is within everyone.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Are we open to seeing the divine in, well, unexpected people and places?
He preached this universal spirituality. The whole universe is contained within a single human being, you. Seeing people as unfinished works of art.
But inevitably, this kind of thinking, this challenging of norms,
It gets him labeled a heretic, devil incarnate. People were threatened by him.
So back to Baba Zaman, Shalm's master. He gets a letter.
Right, describing the scholar in Konya named Rumi, brilliant, famous, thousands of followers.
But inwardly dissatisfied, feeling like he needs a true companion, someone to unlock his soul.
And Baba Zaman knows. He knows Shams is that companion for Rumi.
But he hesitates. He's fond of Shams, knows the journey to Konya could be dangerous. He actually delays sending him for nearly a year.
But eventually Shams has to go. He trusts in divine timing, that God never burdens us with more than we can bear, and off he goes to Konya.
And their first meeting, it changes everything for Rumi.
Totally transformative. Shams basically tells Rumi, look, all this intellectual stuff, it ties you in knots, it risks nothing.
But love, Shams says, dissolves all tangles and risks everything.
And he pushes Rumi towards poetry, tells him that's his true calling, not just lectures and sermons, calls him one of the finest poets the world will ever see.
And that right there is the spark, the beginning of Rumi becoming the poet of love we know today.
Meanwhile, let's jump back to 2008.
Okay. Ella is now emailing back and forth with Aziz Zahara, the author of Sweet Blasphemy.
And this isn't just casual email. For Ella, it becomes this lifeline, almost a cry for help.
She feels herself changing, like her whole inner world is shifting from dull grays and browns to this bright, tantalizing red.
She's drawn to how Aziz talks about the big stuff, life and death, and above all, love. He's not into small talk.
No, he's direct. And we start to learn about his own life, which has been pretty intense.
Yeah, a passionate but tragic relationship with a woman named Margot, her death, and then his own downward spiral.
He calls that dark period his encounter with the letter S in the word Sufi, like the shadow side.
But then his journey towards Sufism, this mystical path, it started almost accidentally for material reasons, but then it took over, became everything.
It's fascinating how he frames his spiritual path using the letters of the word Sufi, from shadow to union, finding.
Finding inner peace. It's a whole journey condensed into those 4 letters.
And this leads to a really poignant moment. It's Ella's 40th birthday.
Right. And she gets an email from Aziz. He tells her that turning 40 isn't just a number.
No, he says it symbolizes the ascent from one level to a higher one and spiritual awakening.
He connects it to all these mystical traditions. Noah and the flood lasting 40 days, Jesus in the wilderness for 40 days, Muhammad receiving his prophecy at 40.
Buddha meditating for 40 days, Shams 40 rules. It's this powerful symbol of transformation. A new mission, he calls it.
Their connection deepens so much that Ella decides to meet him. She travels to Boston.
She's nervous, obviously, but the meeting isn't awkward at all. It's deeply spiritual.
He gives her gifts, a tapestry, a necklace with a whirling dervish, and then he prays over her.
Yeah, it's described as non-carnal, but incredibly intimate. He murmurs words like a secret ancient code.
And she feels possessed by so magnificent a desire, floating on warm, wavy waters. Surrender and smile.
It's like entering that zone of love the book talks about, where normal language just stops working, becomes obsolete.
But just as these connections deepen, both Shams and Aziz face huge challenges.
For Shams, his radical ideas and his intense closeness with Rumi create enemies.
Big time, especially Rumi's own son, Aladdin. He's jealous, maybe threatened. He spreads rumors that Shams is a manipulator, even an assassin, a hashashin.
It gets really ugly. And ultimately, tragically.
Aladdin and some others plot against Shams. They murder him and throw his body down a well.
It's brutal. But even in that final moment, Shams seems to embody his own teachings. Rule number 37.
God is a meticulous clockmaker. Everything on earth happens in its own time. For each, there is a time to love and a time to die.
It's this acceptance, this radical trust in a larger order, even amidst violence and chaos.
It's profound. And Rumi's reaction to Shams's death is equally profound. His grief transforms him again.
Yeah, he stops preaching in the old way and just starts reciting poetry spontaneously.
He says the poems aren't his. I am only a vehicle for letters. He dictates them to his scribe, Hussam.
And this is how the Mathnali, his epic masterpiece, comes into being. It cements his legacy as the voice of love.
He also formalizes the Sema, that famous whirling dervish dance.
Explaining that the dance connects heaven and earth, one hand up, receiving God's love, the other hand down, distributing it to people.
Such a beautiful symbolism. Meanwhile, in the modern story, Aziz reveals his own major challenge.
His encounter with the letter I in Sufi.
Which stands for illness. He has terminal cancer.
He actually wrote Sweet Blasphemy, the novel Ella read during this time. It was his way of grappling with life, death, and not wanting to die.
And finding love with Ella at this stage of his life, he says it was much more difficult than his past loves. It forced him to rethink everything.
So Ella makes a huge decision. She leaves David, her husband. Their marriage had just become this tangle of resentment.
And she moves to Amsterdam to be with Aziz, fully embracing this new, uncertain life.
We learn they have about a year together before Aziz passes away. And fittingly, he dies in Konya.
Wow, Konya, the city of Rumi and Shams, bringing it all full circle.
Exactly. Connecting Ella's modern journey right back to that ancient place of transformation.
And after Aziz dies, Ella reflects on the final rule, rule number 40.
A life without love is of no account. Don't ask yourself what kind of love you should seek. Divisions only lead to more divisions. Love has no labels, no definitions. It is what it is, pure and simple.
That really sums up the core message, doesn't it, from both stories?
It does. This idea that love transcends categories, transcends time. The forms might change, the parts change, but the whole always remains the same.
For every Shams, a new one eventually emerges. The energy continues.
So this deep dive really illuminated how a single story weaving these two timelines can unpack such profound ideas about, well, life, love, spiritual growth.
Yeah, it shows how real change happens when we open our hearts, even when it's hard, even when it disrupts everything we thought we knew.
It's about challenging our own assumptions, maybe surrendering a bit more.
And seeing beyond surfaces, recognizing that sweet blasphemy and sincere devotion wherever we find it. Finding the divine within.
So maybe the question for you listening is this. What dictionary in your own life needs redefining? How can you look at your world, maybe through the eyes of Majnun, the eyes of someone utterly consumed by love, to see the real Lila, the true beauty and divine connection around you?
Something to think about, because as the book suggests, in the end, love really does explain all.